What's going on, YouTube? Ferocity here. I hope you guys are doing well. Today, we're going to take a look back across the entirety of the Call of Duty franchise and look at the worst maps that Call of Duty has had to offer in each of its titles since Call of Duty 4. So that means for every single Call of Duty, except for one, we're going to look back at the worst map in that respective multiplayer. So without any further delay, let's get started with Call of Duty 4. Now, honestly, Call of Duty 4 has some of my favorite maps in this entire franchise, but when I was thinking about the worst maps, there's no other map that we can talk about other than Block. This, to me, is one of the worst maps in the entirety of Call of Duty's franchise, and actually found itself on a few worst of lists when I was doing research for this video. Now, Block did have some fun moments, especially when it wasn't just snipers in your lobby. But when it was all snipers and you're the only one not sniping, it led to a lot of time limit games, a lot of boring moments, a lot of frustrating moments, and all in all, just made you want to rage quit. So, not a very good map. Now, moving on to World at War, this is going to be the only game that I don't have a worst map, and that doesn't mean that there isn't a map in this game that's really bad, but I don't have enough hours poured into World at War to really have an opinion on any of the maps in that game. So, unfortunately, for this list, I'm not going to put a map in here. So if you're a World at War fan and you have a least favorite map and you want to let me know, leave a comment down below. Moving on to Modern Warfare 2. Now, I didn't personally hate this map all that much, but I did think that sometimes it was just an awful map to play, and that is, of course, Derail. Now, Underpass could have gone here as well, but I think there's more redeeming qualities to Underpass as a map versus Derail. This map, I tell you, sometimes was so boring, and then at other times it was so exciting. It was the weirdest dichotomy that I've seen in a map like this. Not only was it gigantic, but it felt gigantic all the time. Just whether it was domination or demolition or whatever game mode you were playing, the map always felt too big, and it always felt that anytime you're in the open, you were in the sights of a sniper, and anytime that you were in a close corridor, a shotgun was going to get you. And it was just a frustrating map, because anytime you got to where you wanted to be, someone would be there before you, and then you'd have to start the process all over again. So yeah, Derail, not a very fun map. Now moving over to Black Ops 1, and frankly, it's difficult for me to find a map that I truly hated in this game, because this game, like Call of Duty 4, had a lot of quality maps. I think Treyarch knocked it out of the park with Black Ops 1's map design, but I will put Crisis in here solely because it was a very weird map that had weird bottlenecks on it, and was so different from the rest of the game's flow and regular map design that it just kind of felt a little bit different than everything else. And unfortunately, that different was never a positive thing for this map. So Crisis earns the spot here for Black Ops 1. Moving to Modern Warfare 3. Downturn. I don't know what Infinity Ward was trying to do with this map. Obviously, for those of you that weren't around during the initial run of Modern Warfare 3, Infinity Ward really destroyed any type of verticality in any of their map design for Modern Warfare 3, and that was to the detriment of the game, in my personal opinion. The maps that thrived the most were the ones that had a little bit of verticality, but Downturn was not one of those maps. This map was gray as gray could be. It didn't have any life in it. It just felt depressing to play, and the flow and the spawns and all those things just led to it being a very unenjoyable experience overall. I think I made it known in my tier list video that Black Ops 2 is my favorite Call of Duty game, but that doesn't mean that Black Ops 2 doesn't have bad maps, because it does. And there were two maps that I had up for this spot, and it was between Aftermath and Drone. And honestly, I've played Drone more recently than I've played Aftermath, and I don't hate Drone as much as I used to. Which means Aftermath is probably the worst map in this game. And whether it's the aesthetic of the map flow, or the fact that it just doesn't really play all that well, it's not a super fun map, leads this to being the worst map in the game. And frankly, I'm okay with it being the worst map in the game, because when you look at some of the other ones that we're going to talk about, oh boy, Aftermath certainly isn't any of the worst in the Call of Duty franchise. It's just the worst one in this game. Call of Duty Ghosts. I had to go back and look at the maps that were in Call of Duty Ghosts because I forgot what was in that game. And I'm going to be doing other lists talking about maps in Call of Duty, and I think Ghosts might be the hardest one for me. Even though I played a ton of it, that game is so forgettable for whatever reason. But its worst map is not forgettable. Of course, we could look at Stonehaven as being the worst map in the Call of Duty franchise, just due to its size and lack of anything going on in it. But no, Freefall is the worst map because they tried to be innovative with it shifting and changing throughout the game, but it just didn't work. It wasn't very well done. And yeah, it's the worst map in the game by far. Nothing redeeming about it whatsoever. At least Stonehaven was fun to play on Infected. That's the only thing I'll say. Moving to Advanced Warfare, another game that had some pretty forgettable maps, now that I remember it. But Green Band is probably the worst map in this game. You don't remember Green Band? Yeah, neither did I until I watched gameplay of it and was reminded very quickly that this map was a chore to play. I did not enjoy it. I'm so glad that we're past the advanced movement era of Call of Duty, but oh boy, please never force me to watch Advanced Warfare gameplay ever again. It'll probably happen regardless. Moving on now to Black Ops 3. Another game that has some great maps and some so-so maps, but when it comes to the worst of the worst, Exodus has to be it. I don't know what they were doing here. It feels very sectioned off when you play it. Yes, there's a core area for you to go play in, but for the most part, it just feels very segmented. It feels that you're forced to fight in these very tight corridors, and it doesn't have the openness or the exploration that other maps from Black Ops 3 has, and it actually feels that it's a little bit more restrictive in its creativity versus other maps in Black Ops 3. Now, speaking of lack of creativity, let's just look at Infinite Warfare from the get-go. It was a direct ripoff of Black Ops 3 with none of the charm and none of the heart. And that was very evident with the worst map in this game, which is, of course, Genesis. And the reason why it's the worst map isn't because it necessarily plays the worst in the game. It's not necessarily the worst looking map. But the problem with it is it was once again a boring reimagining of Dome. And when you can't live up to the original in any way, shape, or form, you get a map like this. And unfortunately, Genesis is just not a very good map. And I am glad that it feels like Infinity Ward has stopped trying to reimagine Dome. They just throw it into their games now instead of reimagining it. But yeah, stop doing that, Infinity Ward, please. Going now to World War II. This is probably the easiest consensus for anybody out there. We all remember the dog days of World War II where we had 9 maps at launch, and one of them was Gustav Cannon. That map, I tell you, not good. I didn't mind it all the time, but my goodness, when you played, maps like Ardennes Forest or Pointe du Hoc or Saint Marie, and then you had to play Gustav Cannon, you were reminded just how bad this map was. I don't know what Sledgehammer was going for here, but this map, I tell you, this was definitely one of the lowest ranked on every single top 5 list I saw, for good reason. Terrible map, garbage tier, dog water. I don't know what you were thinking on this one, Sledgehammer. Now moving on to Black Ops 4. And I had a much tougher time than this, because World War II was like the easiest of easy picks I could have, outside of maybe Downturn from Modern Warfare 3. But I had a tough time with Black Ops 4 because there's some quality maps here and there's a lot of so-so maps. And while I don't think that this map's necessarily bad, I think it's very so-so and it just doesn't play as well as the other maps in the game. And that is going to be Icebreaker for me. I don't mind this map. I don't necessarily hate it, but for whatever reason, it doesn't offer the same type of flow or movement or ambiance or aesthetic as other maps in Black Ops 4 and other maps that I just feel all in all play better. So Icebreaker gets the unfortunate nod here for Black Ops 4. Now, when it comes to Modern Warfare 2019, this is 100% a free space. I do not need to emphasize how bad this map is, how unenjoyable it is to play, and how much Infinity Ward missed the mark. But Picadilly is the worst map in the Call of Duty franchise, bar none. You think Gustav Cannon is bad, you think Downturn is bad, you think Derail is bad. None of those maps hold a candle to how bad Picadilly is. It is the worst map ever conceived by a human being. Whoever designed this map over an Infinity Ward should not have a job anymore. Sorry, I just get a little passionate when it comes to Picadilly because I just wonder who in their right mind thought that map was worthy of launching in any way, shape, or form. So let's move over to Black Ops Cold War, where Armada Strike is the worst map in this game. And it only became worse as the life cycle went on because people would just camp in the middle control room, whether it was with snipers or with shotguns. It was just a sweaty play, and people would use the street sweeper in there and they just keep you out. They'd have motion sensors. It just became very sweaty to play, and it was always the same type of over-the-top sweaty players that would play the same playstyle and just became very boring and unfun. I think a map that was actually a little bit more creative could have played better if the community didn't ruin it for everyone else. Speaking of community ruining it for everybody else, Vanguard's Shipment was the worst map in that game. And because it was basically on fire for 2 straight months and Sledgehammer Games did nothing about it, that was the worst experience I have ever had playing Call of Duty. Even though Picadilly exists, Shipment in Vanguard was a garbage fire, legitimately. Going into that map was knowing that you were going to have some type of brain hemorrhage when you left it. What an unenjoyable piece of garbage Shipment was for like 2 months of the Vanguard life cycle. And frankly, I don't know who was playing Vanguard after those 2 months. So that gets my vote. Earlier in this video, you heard me talk about my disdain for Picadilly. And while that remains true, I feel whoever created Picadilly had stuck around in their position at Infinity Ward and decided to not only double down on terrible, but multiply it by infinity, with the worst map in Modern Warfare 2 being whatever the nonsense is that is Border Crossing. What an awful map. A terrible map. Frankly, a map that should never see the light of day again. But that's it. That's what we end this video on. Is probably the worst string of maps we have ever seen in the Call of Duty franchise, starting with Picadilly and ending with Border Crossing. I might play maps like Block and Derail 1,000 times before I want to get into another match on Picadilly or Border Crossing. So we want to have an argument about the worst map in Call of Duty's franchise history. I think we just need to look back at the last 2 Infinity Ward titles and we find 2 pretty willing combatants that would destroy any other map before it. It's kind of funny when you look back at all the Infinity Ward titles and you see how bad their worst maps are. Border Crossing, Picadilly, Freefall, Downturn, Derail, Block. What were the developers in Infinity Ward thinking with these maps? What were the developers at any of these studios thinking when they released such hits as Gustav Cannon, Crisis, Aftermath, Exodus? But anyways, guys, that's it for the video today. Let me know down below what your least favorite map in the Call of Duty franchise is, or leave me your list either on Twitter or down below in the comment section. Thank you guys very much for watching. Hope you enjoyed. If you did, could you please hit that like button? If you want to see more videos from me, please hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you guys next time.